Excited to welcome back the bro, Micah Cramer. Micah, what's poppin'?
Nothing much, man. Just hanging out at the apartment. How about you?
You good? You good? I got my Kobe Bryant coffee cup. I have a list of questions, and I also have my very own Kramer basketball mask. I know you have one too.
I just wore it to the store.
I'm wearing it not for this whole podcast, but I just put it on. So you, the listener, can become one of the only people in the world with a CB mask. So go to the link in the description below and you can order of a limited quantity that we have remaining of your Kramer basketball mask. You're supporting this podcast, you're supporting me, you're supporting everything that Kramer basketball is all about. And while you're doing that, you're staying safe and you're looking good while you're doing it. So get your
Mhm.
own CB mask while supplies last. Link in the description below. Moving on to the questions. Micah, I'm surprised we haven't done this episode earlier, but there's been a lot going on.
Yeah.
A lot going on with the pandemic, a lot going on with school. I launched a new website, finally launched it a few weeks ago, a lot going on. So we are talking about your preparation for this upcoming college season, assuming it happens. And amidst all the crazy stuff, we're doing this interview assuming college basketball season will happen in some way, shape, or form. So anything that you want to say before I get into the first question?
Um, yeah, I guess something I want to touch on is for me and pretty much any other level of college, this year doesn't count towards our eligibility. So really, this is just like an absolute blessing to even be able to do preseason workouts with my teammates and start practice like we already have been. So really, if we can play one game this year, that's awesome because whatever we can do is technically like extra because I've put in all this work and I've built this relationship with my teammates and I've practiced with them for this certain amount of time and it doesn't count towards my eligibility. I just like to say that's pretty awesome. And I'm super thankful just for what we've been able to do so far. And I'm just hoping and praying that, we can get out on the floor against a different team and, show them what we got.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have been practicing, so it's kind of weird for you to practice and then not be able to practice. Um, and then, you know, the situation is really unique. Like you're in a really good spot because you're mid college career,
Mm-hmm.
where this, in a sense, could hurt a college senior who's like, well, I'm graduated. Like, what am I going to come back for another year of athletics, especially if they're not on a full ride or any type of scholarship? You got a high school senior who's like, okay, now I'm competing with essentially a full roster for a roster spot next year. Like
Yeah.
there's just so many different dynamics to what is going on. But it definitely, I mean, that's a positive attitude if I've ever seen one because it you want to play, right? Of course, we want everybody to be safe, but you want to play. But to be able to look at it, it's like, hey, I can, this doesn't count against my eligibility is a great point and a good reminder when things may get very frustrating for you throughout the course of the season with the pandemic. You can remind yourself, hey, I still have 3 college seasons left is pretty awesome. So what are some things that you've done? And let me preface this podcast with, you know, we're talking with you, a current college athlete, on your preparation and what are you doing to individually improve yourself and individually improve those around you this basketball season. And my hope is that there's a player out there that's listening to this and they're saying, I'm going to take away 1, 2, or 3 things from listening to this that I'm going to apply to my team when we get back together and we're going to be better for that. My hope is that there's a basketball coach listening to this episode and they're listening to some of the things that you're going to say. And they're going to say, I'm going to send this to some of my players because they need to hear a good word of how you're viewing and visualizing what you hope to happen this year, the impact that you're trying to make. So that's my hope getting into this episode today. So number one, how have you prepared this off season coming into this season? Because this off season has been like no other because of some of the restrictions on what you've been able to do and not do.
Hmm. So yeah, the stuff that I did physically, specifically in the off season, was I did the jump attack program by Tim Grover. I did that last fall, like when school really got shut down, everybody got sent home. I immediately started doing that program. So that was right after spring break. And as I went through that program, I do it just about every day, and then I go outside and I do my skill work. I do Cramer basketball workouts, and I'd get shots up. Um, so really during that time, it was a lot of individual training. But as the summer kicked off, this off season, more than any off season in my entire life, I played a ton of one-on-one and a ton of two-on-two, and that really benefited my game because I've been doing all this drill work. I've been working on speed and explosiveness, and in a one-on-one game and even in a two-on-two game, you have to make something happen. So really, all the stuff that I was working on, I was able to use it like the next day or later that day. I'd get a workout in at grandma's house, and then I'd call up Isaiah Williamson who plays at Elma. I'd call up Evan Neff, who plays at Concordia, and then I call up one of my buddies who doesn't play in college, but he's a very skilled player, and we'd just go to the park and we'd play and we'd put all these things that we're working on to the test. So I was really able to just expand my game, expand a variety of finishes, and also just working on a lot of touch because we're playing at the park. This hoop behind me is actually one of the hoops we used. It's kind of tough to make some shots on. But it just really benefited each one of us on the offensive and defensive end. So I'd say the main thing I did over the summer was working on explosiveness, working on repetition, which is a big thing just in the off season, and then putting all that to the test against good players and players who are better than I am.
You put an emphasis on your body. You obviously have a high amount of emphasis and repetition with the skill development, and then you're putting into play the best that you can. And that's one benefit is you probably wouldn't have sought out some of those guys for one-on-one or two-on-two like you did this offseason compared to another, because you probably just get 10 guys and run. But
Yeah.
there's benefits to that small group one-on-one, two-on-two, more reps, more touches, more time that you're in a position to succeed or fail instead of just being one of the 10 guys out on the court. I think that's really important. Side note, the hoop behind you has a ripped up barrel, barely any net on it. So before I get into the next question, would you rather play on a hoop with a double rim or play on a hoop with no net?
I would much rather play on a hoop with a double rim because it just makes the regular game so much easier. I played at the park the other day with a double rim, and if I were to make shots, I had to flick my wrist. I had to make sure the offhand was touching my left wrist after every shot. And if I just kind of flicked it up there, when maybe you have a heat check and you kind of throw the ball up a little quicker than normal, like you can't do that on a double rim. You have to make sure every shot is perfect and every shot is exactly the same. And that's the benefit of a double rim. So I'll take a double rim all day long.
I would definitely take a double rim, but for a different reason. The no net means I'm chasing the basketballs all the time.
That'd be
I
terrible.
mean, if I shoot 10 shots, I'm gonna swish at least 5 of them. Like, I'm not even talking makes. I'm gonna swish at least half the shots if I'm shooting around. Well, if there's no net, the ball just went bouncing through somewhere. That's just a lot of running for me.
Yeah.
So I'm always taking the double rim because the no net, way too much work. All
Hmm.
right. So next question. You talked a little bit about what you did this summer, even last spring. That's good stuff. Now you go back to campus. What do you do this preseason? What have you done this preseason to improve yourself as a player?
So as soon as we got back to campus, the gym that we use a public gym, and that was closed for a long time. So we didn't have access to a weight room. But eventually we got access to an apartment complex that has some light weights, has a pull-up bar and stuff like that. So I'd get in there and, I'd work on some movements. I'd do some yoga, just to maintain the stuff that I had built over the summer. But for the most part, when I got here, I would immediately get in the gym and I was playing one-on-one with two of my teammates who one of them is, about 6 foot, 180, one of the quickest people I've ever played against. So just learning how to play against him, he's a great slasher, great finisher. And then I play against my other teammate who's 6'9", really long arms and very coordinated. And and then they'd play against me who's, deceptive and I can do a variety of things, but I'm not too like amazing at anything, I would say. So all three of us were just able to learn so much by guarding three players that were completely different from one another. So we've had a lot of great battles, and that really prepared us for when the gym finally did open, and we were able to, get the whole team together. I felt like I was ready to attack and get in the lane easier against a 5-on-5, much easier than last year, and get all the way to the rim. And I also felt more comfortable taking contested shots, because one thing we had worked on is playing one-on-one with about 4 seconds on the shot clock. So you're not just dribbling around all day until the defender gets bored and you go by them. Like, you got to do something and you got to score, and it's probably going to be a tough shot. So now more than ever, I feel comfortable, taking contested looks. And that was something that we really focused on when I was working individually with my teammates.
And that's a great point because at the college level, shot clock, a
Yeah.
lot of possessions, you don't get a wide open look. You
Yeah.
have to just take the best shot that you can given each possession. And sometimes the best shot in a 30-second clock is a contested jump shot. So it's key to practice those types of things. So you've talked a lot about competing, which I think is great. The skills, the drills are essential, but there has to be that game application. You're doing that. What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned last year that are going to help you this year?
That's a good question. I learned so much last year. Um, just coming in as a freshman, you realize how much faster things are, how much more physical it is. But as I kind of got used to it, I was able to, when you first come in, you think about everything so big picture. You're like, these people are athletic, these people are quick. There's no way I can drive by them. And then as you start to get used to the pace and the speed, you start to see the defense in layers kind of. You're like, oh, there's, it's tough initially to get by somebody, but once you get through that first layer, then you can find an open teammate. If you attack this gap, something else will open up. So just as time went on, being able to see the game a little bit deeper, and that had a lot to do with getting used to the speed. And some other things that I learned is, and what you preach on all the time, is that basketball is not an equal opportunity sport. There's players who get a lot more opportunities than me, and I'm not complaining about that, because this is what I signed up for. I love the game and I'm going to train my absolute hardest. So if I do get an opportunity, I can prove myself. And coach did give me a great opportunity last year, and I wasn't up for the task. And that's why I had to sit the bench. I had to learn, and I had to grow slowly, because I guess that's the type of player I am, and I'm working on changing that and being ready for my next college. But just learning that and appreciating the game is that basketball is not an equal opportunity sport, but also at the same time, that is no reason for an excuse, because the coach has to put the best five guys on the floor. So you have to figure out, what can I do to benefit the team? And then what are my weaknesses? Can I minimize these as much as possible? So when I get on the floor, I can do what coach has me out there to do, but I'm not going to be a liability in certain areas.
That's gold because the coach's job is the team,
Yeah.
and then the individuals are the pieces to the team. The coach's job is not, I want to do what Micah wants, and I got to do what the next player wants and what the next player wants. because if all those individuals come before the team, now the team is not going to be successful. So understanding the game as a player through the eyes of a coach are so valuable, right? A coach has to win, right? You could get fired pretty easily at the college level. So understanding that it's about the team, it's about having team success, chemistry, guys playing well and complementing each other. And, you know, at the high school level and up, and at every level really, there's no favorites, right? The coach isn't playing, who he likes. Coach is playing the five people on the court at a time that he thinks can give, or she thinks can give, the most success to the team. That's
Yeah.
it. That's it. And, we have to make sure that we don't overthink it. We don't take things personal. We just say this is a learning process. And having played college ball and everything, there's so many things that, when it comes to transitioning and playing at a higher level, there's so many things that and you pick up playing over the years, but you cannot teach it to somebody else because it's just experience.
Yeah.
Like you have to go through the fire. You have to experience certain speed, certain athleticism, certain physicality to be able to let it soak in, and you could have anybody say, hey, get ready. The game's going to be a lot faster. Get ready. It's going to be a lot more physical. Well, yeah, but you got to feel it. You got to be in it in order to be able to take that next step and that next jump. Do some players transition once they get acclimated to that faster than others? Yeah, of course. But you can't get a true feeling for something until you're in it. And, that goes from being a freshman who gets moved up to varsity, or that means being a freshman playing your first year of college ball. And you're like, okay, this is real. Um, what was that like? What was that like for you? I mean, was there ever an experience in high school that would be comparable to that first season as a freshman playing college ball?
Yeah, definitely. I just remember a time that my sophomore year when I got moved up to varsity in high school, I was so frustrated because we were running R&R, which was an offense called read and react. It's where you run a ball screen on each side, and it's just a continuous set of ball screens. And I had a guy who's an all conference player on me who is all conference just because he's good at defense, and he's way stronger than me and bigger than me. And I'm trying to dribble him down to a point where I can be effective off a ball screen, and he keeps forcing me up too high. And coach keeps blowing the whistle, and coach is yelling at me for taking too long and dribbling too much. But at the same time, he's also yelling at me for not getting to the correct spot. And I was like, how can I possibly get to the right spot without like having to dribble more? And it was just something that like over time I was going to be able to do. And it was like he was asking me to do something that I thought was impossible in the moment. And then, a couple weeks later, I'm just doing it. So that's kind of how college basketball felt. That was how much of my freshman year felt. Is I'm looking at, we had a transfer point guard who was the player of the year at his previous college, and he's the same size as me. We're both not very athletic, and we both have the same playing style, but he's 10 times better than I am. And I'm like, why is that? And it's because he played a full year of college at his previous college and was the starting point guard, and he learned so much, and he could read and react to the defense at a much higher level than I could. And now, he graduated, and I'm trying to fill that role, and I can just see myself, doing a lot of the things that he did last year and excelling in a lot of the same areas. And I'm like, I can do this, and it just took time. A lot of things just had to click.
Yeah, getting used to those things that became really uncomfortable for you, are the difference maker. They're a difference maker between, that player being an all conference player or not, right? Is having some of that experience of what it takes to be successful. Um, I remember I was playing against Lamont Murray, who used to play for the Clippers, and I had been playing overseas, and we're out in Los Angeles, and I'm playing Lamont Murray. He's retired from the NBA, so we're playing in the semi-pro game, and he was about 6'8", probably like 250, and we had like a 3 guard lineup. So I was trying to check him, and I remember him just. I mean, I never felt like I felt the best comparison would be like I felt naked out on the court. Like there was just nothing I could do. I mean, the dude. I mean, the only thing I had on him because he was old. I mean, in his prime, he'd been faster than me too. Um, but I mean, he would bump me. He would shoot over me. He had every little tiny trick and nudge, and then he could shoot. And so he hit like three. Like he'd take his right shoulder and he's ram his right shoulder into me, and then he just kind of lean back, rise up, and hit a three. And I think he hit 3 threes on me in like a half or a quarter. And I wasn't even guarding him, the whole time. And it was a helpless feeling. But what you learn after, like, was I ever going to stop that guy? No, he had like, you know, 70 pounds on me, 60 pounds on me and 6 inches and all that stuff. But when you're in that type of atmosphere long enough, you learn all of the things that you can do.
Yep.
And that game, and specifically, I had like one of my best games playing in that league. I was getting torched, even though I was playing my butt off.
Mm.
Um, but you learn all the little things that you can do. Like if you got a shot, you got to shoot it right away. You got a driving angle, you got to take it right away. And you can't ever second guess yourself, because that is the biggest mistake you could make. You already know you're going to go in and make mistakes anyway.
Mm.
So if you start to second guess yourself, now everything then becomes a mistake. That's I just wanted to kind of add that because I thought that was similar to what you were talking about a little bit. You learn when you're in it. Um, Next question: game specifics. Obviously, Cramer basketball, myself, you like we're big into player development, skill development, working on your game. What are some things specifically that you've done this off season to improve?
Yeah, some things that I've really done this off season is working on movements within our offense. So our offense does, we do loops and pitches. So you drive to the elbow, the guy that's on the wing sprints up, and you kind of toss him the ball, just like a pitch in a football game. So one thing that I really had to focus on this offseason is just getting it and going. And another thing that I focused on is making myself wider, making myself bigger by using slide dribbles and stuff. And I use that in games when I'm playing point guard, when I'm using ball screens, trying to drag a defender. And I use attacking immediately when coach puts me on the wing. And I think I will play both of those positions this year. So I'm glad I worked on both. And one of my favorite things that I found most beneficial is the drills that you do, super simple, where you start out just in your stance. You're completely standing still. So you get in your stance, you touch the ground, and you just go. And you do that 4 times. You get in your stance again, you cross over, you go. You get in your stance, between the legs, go, behind the back, go. And just working on starting from a standstill, to me, that just makes going by people when you already have a movement beforehand so much easier. So I'd say that my main focus overall this offseason was working on getting by the initial defender. And then I also just worked on, and I didn't realize how much it would pay off, is finishing in the paint with pivots and with floaters. Because last year, the only buckets I would get is a 3-pointer if I was open and a floater. And now this year, I can get in the lane, I can shoot that floater if I want, or I can do a pump fake, I can do a up and under, I can get on 2, I can shoot a fadeaway in the paint, or I can pop up and try to rise over with a speed pull up. And just doing all those variety of repetitions throughout the off season, it's kind of become second nature now. When I use all these moves to drive by, and I make the reads in the middle of the paint, that's definitely the biggest leap I've made this year, because last year I was sort of one dimensional. I had to shoot a floater, Now, if I don't have that floater, I can pivot, I can step through, I can see my teammate somewhere else, or I can take it back, shoot a short little fadeaway, um, and that's just it's made the game a lot more fun, honestly, working on those things.
It's cool to hear that. I think, all those things that you mentioned were things that you had some ability to do
Yeah,
at the high school level already, right? And you had some ability if the opportunity was there to do it probably last year as well. But then as we talked about, you experienced the level, the speed, the height, the strength, whatever that is, and then you say, okay, I have to get better at those things that I've already been doing. I have to get, faster at something. I have to understand a situation for a shot fake or a pivot or you had the floater, but the situation to get by in your initial defender and what that looks like given a certain situation. I mean, you broke down like, okay, well, if you're on the perimeter up top, you might use a slide dribble to get something going. The on the wing, catching and going right away without breaking your stride is key. And then being able to work on just popping, right, with that first step drill that we talked about. For those that aren't familiar with our Cramer basketball program, which like all the stuff that you mentioned is in all of our workouts, like go to member.kramerbasketball.com, sign up, right? Season, you got access to a gym right now, buy a membership for a month and do the workouts until you can get back, start playing with your teammates. But break down what the slide dribble is right now, because I think there's people listening that can add that to their game and be pretty effective.
Yeah, so a slide dribble is kind of like an in and out, except you're moving your entire body. So let's say with the in and out, you got your hand here, you're bringing the ball to the inside of your body and pushing it out, and you might do a jab. You might look this way and go that way. Basically, what a slide dribble is, instead of doing just a full, small, quick in and out, you're taking the ball and you're pushing it out to the side, and you're kind of dragging and sliding. So it's like you're doing a defensive slide, but you're a little bit taller. We call that stance one. And you're dragging yourself out to the side. And when you do this, the defender is either going to stay in the same spot and you drag the ball out and you go, or the defender overreacts. He slides too far and you cross over and you go. So you're forcing the defender to make a decision, and you just go from there. So one of the things that I like to do most that I worked on a ton this offseason is I go from a slide into a speed move, because when you go by a defender, you either do it by shifting them or freezing them. So I like to give the defender a little shift move, and then I maybe like to pound or cross jab and give them a freeze move, and that usually enables me to get the edge. So that's primarily when I use a slide dribble. Other times when I use the slide dribble that I mentioned is if I need to set up for a ball screen, I need to make sure I'm facing the basket, I need to make sure I'm reading the court. I'm going to try to slide and push the ball out to the side so I can get to the wing and get to a good position, for the screener to just have the best chance and give my team the best option. So that's my best summary of a slide dribble there.
Yeah, it's a really good breakdown, kind of an upright defensive stance.
Yep.
You mentioned kind of a somewhat of a mini in and out. You can do the slide dribble with a crossover between legs, behind the back, whatever move you want to do. It's more about the body position and movement. You talked about keeping the hips on the rim so you can shoot it, pass it, drive it. Um, and then the other thing that I'll add with the slide dribble that's really effective is using it for like post entries or just to get to a spot to create a better passing angle. Like if you think of if I have a teammate who's posted up on the left block and I'm at say the left slot, instead of me dribbling down to the wing, I might slide dribble to the wing. I slide dribble to the wing. Now the defense has to be a little more honest because I could change direction quick. I could shoot it right away. And as I slide dribble and that basketball is on my left hand because I'm drifting to the left and that's the side that I want to get that post entry pass to my teammate. A lot of times when you do that dribble, the basketball is outside of your body. It's outside of your hip. We're stretching our dribbles out, right? So that makes the pass that much easier because the ball's real wide already. And so when we're working on a lot of our dribble moves, passing becomes easier when we stretch our dribbles out, stretch it around the hips, stretch it around the waist, and even higher sometimes. that basketball is high and wide, elbows almost back already and loaded. Just pop that pass wherever you need to. It's not just about dribbling and scoring and all that stuff. The passing angles become that much bigger using the slide dribble. You talked about a few finishes as well. I thought that was pretty cool. The second pivot, using the floater. Has the What's helped you most with getting by that initial defender that you mentioned? Is it like a drill? You talked about the drill, or first step drill that I call it, where you're just down and then you work on popping, or is it the fact that you played a lot of competition this summer working on that?
I think it's of course it's the drills because you need to have these moves kind of be second nature to you. You know, if I'm going to do a between the legs move, it's usually because I'm reacting or because, you know, in the back of my mind I just know that's the best thing. I'm not thinking, "Oh, I need to do it between the legs right now." So yeah, just having these moves be second nature to me by repetition, and then in the one-on-one working on attacking the hip, you know, getting to the defender's hip and making sure my next dribble and my shoulder I kind of dipped so I can continue to go by them. That was why I couldn't drive by people, you know, very easily in high school, even against a lot of players, is because they would bump me initially and I would back off. So one thing that I've really had to focus on this off season is when I drive, I worked on getting my shoulder down a little bit and doing a hard dribble, and that next move I really have to, that decides, you know, what's going to happen. That decides if I'm going to pull up, you know, shoot a floater or make it all the way to the basket. So the second dribble is what I've been working on most this offseason. You know, attack the defender's hip and then attack him again, and get to that edge. So I'd say playing against Isaiah Williamson, who's 6'5" and a pretty, he's just a smart defender. So I'd say just playing against one-on-one against him this whole offseason really allowed me to kind of add that to my bag a little bit.
Being able to make that initial move when the defender's in front of you, that's kind of the first line. And then that second aspect of driving is when you're tight, right? We always call, close the gap on the defender, then attack tight. And that's where you're really talking about right now. Is you're talking about that second phase, that dribble after your move, where we really have to attack tight, keep that shoulder down, initiate contact, and then we could try to separate, right? But it could be severing the defender's line to cut you off, just going straight speed to get by them. Or maybe it's another dribble where you just kind of take a body dribble, that we see a lot at the NBA level, can be really effective as well. That's good stuff. Um, what, how's your perspective change? Like, this 2020 has been nuts. It's like, I'm ready for 2021.
Yeah.
How has your perspective on the game changed in this past year?
I'd say it's changed a lot, and I've been thinking about this for a while. Um, I just remember when I was a young basketball player, I was I was so emotional and I was so driven and motivated and I had so much passion. And a lot of times, you know, it resulted in me kicking the ball around the gym and you making me sit out because I was so emotional. But I kind of look back at those times and I remember before practice, you know, in middle school, I'd have my headphones on and I wasn't saying anything. I'm ready to go. And this is just practice with my friends, and I'm like in kill mode because, you know, that's what I live for. That's what I do. And then as I kind of grew up, when I was training and throughout practice, my attitude shifted a little bit and all my training started to be geared and motivated towards, you know, one big moment. So for example, when I was training throughout high school, all I ever thought about is the regional finals, the state championship. And I'm like, all this work is going to pay off during that game. But now my attitude, and my perspective has shifted. When I'm in the gym, I'm in the gym because I love getting better right now. I love playing basketball right now. And, you know, I'm going to treat every single practice now just like it's a game, because what if it's the last practice of the year? And the whole practice I was thinking about what's ahead. So it's good to have a, a long-term mindset and set goals for yourself that you can reach in the future. And that's what I did last year. But I'm kind of going back to how I was when I was a little kid, you know, going to practice and thinking, this is it. I'm going to dominate today. I absolutely cannot wait to do 3-on-2, 2-on-1 drill, to do this shooting drill. That's the mentality that I have now. Every day when coach he reads off the list on what the two teams are going to be during practice, and we compete every drill. And I always say, let's go. We're going to win every single drill, free throw competition, shooting competition, 3-play, 4-minute wars, we're going at it. So that's my mentality now. I'm going to prepare for the games. My goal is to win a championship, but when I'm at practice, I also want to win that practice, and I'm going to have fun doing it. So I'm appreciating the game a lot more than I have in recent years, and I'm just appreciating the process, and my motivation is a little bit different than it used to be.
Yeah, no doubt. I think, we definitely took some things for granted that, we shouldn't be taken for granted. And that's a great example of living in the moment, playing present, and making the most out of the opportunity that you have. Because you're right, you never know when, that's the last game, it's the last practice, and you don't always want to be preparing for something that's may or may not happen
Mhm.
when you miss out on enjoying the journey of putting in the work every single day, the process of getting better. That is what's most important. And that is, in a sense, the most fun. And that's where you learn the most anyway. Like you win the regional title, that's awesome. Like you guys won a regional championship, you made school history. You've won more games in a season than any other high school team when you were at USA. But it wasn't like, okay, you won the 25th game, now you're satisfied. It's like it should, if you're doing it right, I mean, every single practice is something to be excited about, fired up about, and to make the most out of, which you certainly have. But it's funny how certain circumstances can jolt us back into that frame of mind. And often it's because of a circumstance that we don't want to have happen. Like if things are going pretty well for me, I start thinking ahead, what I want to do next, what's going to happen, looking forward to something, which isn't the way you should do something, right? You should be in the moment all the time, be present. Um, but then when things get tough, sometimes it rocks you back into the frame of mind that you should have been in the whole time. Like I remember especially my freshman and sophomore year of college, there were different times where I was like, man, I should be starting. Like I should be like, I don't know why I'm the sixth man. And this is nothing against the coach because the coach had his reasons. And as we talked about in the beginning, like the coach's decision is the coach's decision. Like I'm not saying that what I did wrong was my frame of mind. That's what I can control, right?
Yep.
And I can't control playing time. But what I did was every practice and every drill, I was like, I am going to like I'm when we had practice for the majority of my sophomore year and even some of my freshman year, I was so much more excited for practice than my games. And I think about that. You play basketball for 4 years, college basketball for 4 years. About a year and a half of that, I was like frothing at the mouth for practice more so than I was for games because I was so like, I'm just going to destroy the starters. And it was a lot of fun
Yep.
doing that. Like in a sense, like um, you you have to make the most out of the time that you're given.
Yep.
And there's certain things that we can't control. But when I shifted my mindset to being accepting of the things that I can't control and say, well, what can I control? I can control the effort and the focus that I give in this drill or in this practice. And the results were that, yeah, it was funny. I had a old college coach I was talking with a couple of years ago, and he said one of his favorite things about watching me as a college player was not a game. He said, Steve, I used to love watching you go to practice and destroy the starters. He's like, I've never seen a player go at the starting five like that. Never. In all the years I've been coaching, like you were possessed. And I was like, well, it's funny that you say that because that's exactly how I felt. I'm gonna just take it out on these guys. And it's it's the positive and the negative. Like it's a shame that certain situations should dictate a frame of mind that we should really always be in. Not
Mhm.
in the sense of we're going to show somebody else or be, trying to show somebody up. It's that was the best I could do, the best I could do.
Yeah.
Win, lose, failure, succeed. That was the best that I could do, and it really helped push me towards having a better frame of mind my junior and senior year. So we had two of the winningest seasons in Hope College history, and yeah, I was playing the majority of the minutes and leading the team in scoring and things like that. Um, so it was kind of a combination of those things that I had learned my freshman and sophomore year as a player, and that's kind of the frame of mind that you're in right now, which is pretty cool as well. Um, any other takeaways of how you're going to apply what you're working on now from a skill set standpoint and a mindset standpoint to helping your teammates?
Hmm. Uh, I don't know anything from a skill set standpoint that comes to mind, but I have been working on just building relationships more this year than I did last year. Um, I've become good friends with my teammates. And last week I had to miss a couple practices, had to get tested and stuff. And when I came back to practice, one of my teammates was like, "Hey, we missed you," and that just felt good. That shows that I'm doing something right, and that's what this season and with COVID has taught me is, if the season gets canceled and I didn't make any relationships with my teammates, then I didn't do a very good job. Um, so that's something that I'm really focusing on is, one of my teammates, he's become my workout buddy. So we're hanging out in the mornings, we're working out and we're both super excited about the results that we've had and the results that are coming. So I'd say just using, the weight room, using the drills that you have, uh, and just giving them to my teammates and saying like, "Hey, I got a drill that we can try out. Hey, let's do this, let's do that." This whole season has just like been a absolute blessing, and all this stuff has been used as a tool to, to make friends and just build lifelong relationships. Hopefully.
No, that's great because I think of we think of what makes a good teammate, and a lot of times people from the outside judge what makes a good teammate based on how they see the game look, like who's the player that passes it around the most, something like that. And like, no, that's a person who passes more and might have a good IQ of who should get the ball in certain situations, but that's not what being a great teammate looks like. A great teammate is some of the things that you just mentioned, right? Developing relationships, sharing knowledge, working out together, encouraging one another. You got a teammate says, "Hey man, we missed you at practice," right? It gives you a clue of, yeah, what I'm doing is working, and that comes off into better performance in a game by that player. And maybe it's because you passed the ball, maybe it's not. Maybe you're on the bench, but they're performing better. You say, well, what does that have to do with Micah being a great teammate? He didn't create anything. You kidding me? Right? It's so much bigger than you passed on the ball and you got somebody open. Right? It's all those workouts, all those little um, just pieces of communication and tips when they go to a timeout and you say, "Hey, I see, that player's really, looking at the ball when you're on the wing. Step up and then give a good backdoor cut. That's going to be wide open." Like maybe that all works. You were on the bench when that happened. That's another example. Like we just we view being like I think a Kobe honestly is a good example of this. Like a lot of people viewed him as a selfish player who too many shots. And it's like, you look up the stats, Pau Gasol's best seasons ever were when he played with Kobe for the Lakers.
Mhm.
Like his stats jumped up, his points, his rebounds jumped up when he went from the Grizzlies to the Lakers. Kobe retires, they go back down. Like there were guys in the league who literally were not even playing in the NBA anymore after Kobe was not on their team. Did they like having Kobe as a teammate? Most of them probably not, right? But
Yeah.
that's not always part of what being a great teammate looks like. What being a great teammate looks like is bringing the best out of somebody else. And sometimes you got to push them. Sometimes you got to pull them. Sometimes it is a kind word of advice.
Mhm.
But it's not isolated to, I average 9 assists and somebody else averaged 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I'm leading a Bible study with a wrestler from CMU for athletes, and in the book it says uh, people kind of think that the best teammates have to be the people that are lacking in a certain skill set. So, if you're the sixth man on the team, then, or if you're the eighth man or the guy on the end of the bench, then you need to be really positive and you need to be really vocal. Or if you're the point guard, you need to lift people up and encourage others. But really, what the book says is if you have teammates, your role is to be a great teammate. All right.
Period.
So whatever skill set that is, if you're the guy that shoots the threes, passes the ball, gets the rebounds, plays defense, your role is to do that and to be a great teammate. And going off what you say about Kobe, I just watched the Kobe Doing Work Spike Lee documentary on YouTube again. If anybody ever thinks Kobe's a bad teammate, just watch that documentary. He never shuts up. He's always, telling his teammates where to go, thinking about the game and just speaking to him, just just doing whatever he can to win. And that's what I strive to be like. So, yeah.
Understanding what buttons to push as well for
Yeah.
certain people. Like some people generally might need a kick in the butt. Some
Mhm.
people might need more encouragement, right? Some people may need like a group conversation. Some people may need an individual conversation. Some people may need a text message or a phone call or whatever that might be. You have to understand, if you want to be a great teammate, you have to understand what your role is that will best benefit the group. Like, what was Kobe the best at? Scoring. So he would have been a bad teammate, right, if he wasn't scoring, because that was one of the things he was best at. And then from the team standpoint, it's like, oh, I want to be a better teammate today, so I'm going to pass it a couple more times. No, I want to be a better teammate. I'm going to make sure I'm communicating and pushing and challenging and encouraging my teammates in the way that brings out the best in them.
Mhm.
And we do that. We cannot do that unless we hold ourselves first to the highest standard.
Yep.
And when our teammates see that we're holding ourselves to a high standard, that you hold yourself to a standard that is more than, what a teammate could ask of you, or more than what your coach would ask of you, your standard is already way up here. Now, those words and how you carry yourself and how you treat other people, it carries weight, right?
Mhm.
Because of the standards and the principles that you live by, the accountability that you have for yourself. When we do that first, now we can start to hold other people accountable to also be in that high standard. And when you have multiple people on the same team that have high standards and principles for themselves, that's where special things happen.
Yeah.
But it's got to start with one. It's got to start with at least one person that's willing to do that and understand that. And then, that match can get that flame, and that flame turns into a fire.
Mhm. Yeah. Couldn't have said it any better.
Micah, that was fun. We will have to do this a little more often. I'm surprised we didn't get this kind of postseason prep, preseason prep interview in with you. I've been wanting to do it for a while, but just things got crazy. So I'm glad we were able to do this. Couple quick questions before, on a lighter note, before we finish out the pod. Um, thoughts on the NBA Finals that just finished up?
Um, I mean, I'm not surprised at the result. I mean, I was surprised that the Heat made the finals. I mean, I picked them to win. I picked them to beat the Bucks. But I mean, I thought the Celtics or the Raptors would, whoever made it out of there would beat them. But I was happy to see that team shine. I was happy to see Miami shine because they have a lot of the characteristics that we talk about at Cramer basketball. And then just with the Lakers winning, I mean, it was just no surprise to me. I'm not a huge LeBron fan, but it was still really fun to watch. Uh, just to see it, like mentally, it seems like he's almost like mastered a lot of areas of the game. And just to see him approach the game, it's kind of a beautiful thing to watch. And then, of course, with Anthony Davis, just seeing the work that he's put in and seeing just how dynamic he is. It was fun to watch, but I'm not a Lakers fan right now. So, I mean, I didn't want them to win the title, but it was cool. It was I'm glad they made it happen.
Yeah, I mean they were the best team, period.
Yeah,
And they were the best team, kind of by far, really. I mean, I was
honestly.
surprised the Heat pushed them to 6 games, but the way they ran through the Western Conference, I'm looking forward to this next season where some of the other big top players are back in the game.
Yep.
We had a year without Kevin Durant, who was arguably the best player in the league not that long ago. We have Kyrie Irving Kyrie Irving coming back, who ain't play, and you have out west the Warriors are finally coming back healthy. I mean, when the Warriors make 5 NBA Finals and then their whole team's depleted, it's going to be nice to have Steph Curry, right? MVP, guy who truly you look at who has changed the game the most in the past 5, 6 years.
Mhm.
I mean, look no farther than him. Look at the Trae Youngs and just all of the players coming up that have tried to follow in the footsteps of having the game like Steph Curry does. So it's going to be good to have him and Klay Thompson and the Warriors back in the
Yeah.
scheme of things as the season approaches, and hopefully everything goes safe there. What's one thing you're looking forward to? That's kind of what I'm looking forward to most, honestly, is the coming years. I'm really excited to see the Warriors back, and I'm excited to see what does this Durant, Kyrie Irving team look like out west. And then the Lakers are the team to beat. They have two of the best 3 or 4 players in the league.
Yeah, I really am looking forward to the Warriors. I just enjoy the way they play. And I do want Steph Curry just to have like an MVP caliber season next year, which I think he's very capable of doing. I'm not going to be surprised if that happens. Um, what I'm looking forward to the absolute most is just watching Kevin Durant in the postseason. Uh, you know, from what I've seen on Twitter and from just the word of mouth on there is that Kevin Durant is just as good as he was, and he's might be the scariest player in the NBA. So I think he's going to be fully prepared, and I hope that he stays healthy. So yeah, just seeing him, go through the East, facing some solid teams, and then making it to the finals. I would really like to see, him versus the Lakers in the finals. Um, I think that's what it'll be. But I think the Warriors versus the Lakers would also be a very fun matchup to see. So I think we're going to see both of those matchups, and I'm excited for that. But honestly, my favorite thing about basketball is watching players that can score in a variety of ways and that just have seemed to master the game just off skill, and that's what KD does. He's 7 feet tall, and that surely is a major advantage. But talk about a guy that has mastered his craft. I think KD has mastered a lot of things about the game, and Kyrie has in certain areas as well. So that's what I'm most excited about is the Kevin Durant show.
And a lot of changes as well in the league with the draft, the trades, free agency coming up in such a short window of time. Starting tomorrow, actually, some of that stuff gets rolling. So that's also going to be a unique wrinkle to see who's moving here and there. We might see some fireworks. Who knows? This week, the NBA might look a lot different. Um, from the time that we're doing this podcast to when it even
You're
comes
rocking.
out. Yeah. The one KD story, one of my former teammates in Germany is really good friends with Kevin Durant. So he trains with Kevin Durant during the summer. And he had some video that he put, because we're Facebook friends. So he put some video of him and Kevin Durant training out in, I think, LA this summer. And they're playing one-on-one. And Kevin Durant looks good. I can tell you, I've seen it, basically semi-private Facebook friend put footage of one of my buddy who's playing. I don't know what country he's playing in right now, but he's legit. And, playing against Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant was doing all of his usual Kevin Durant like things on a really, really good professional basketball player. So yeah, I think he's gonna, as soon as he gets used to the 5-on-5 aspect, if they haven't been up and running some of that, he's going to be good to go. No doubt about it. I've seen the footage.
That's awesome.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you taking the time. We wish you the best of luck. Make sure you mask up, stay safe. As I say, mask up. Remember, you can go to the description below, get your Cramer basketball CB mask. Be one of the only people in the world with a Cramer basketball mask. Look good. I can't guarantee it's going to make you play good, but you look good and you'll be safe while you're doing it. Thanks again for listening. You guys get after it today.
Peace.